Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. I am your host. My name is Stunning Steve Barber. And joining me, as always, is my absolutely awesome co-host, the intellectual rock star himself, Delicious Dwaylon Davis.
Hey, everybody.
And wow, I mean, there's not really a one topic that we're going to be hitting on today because there's actually a few good, pretty big news topics, at least big to us. I mean, they're not extremely major, but they're still major. They're probably bigger than minor. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. So, and of course, I mean, I got, I had some, pretty cool things actually happen to me this weekend, especially relating to the world of wrestling. And it's just been kind of just a busy week. And I do want to first of all, give a shout out to the guys at the Finish Your Wrestling podcast because we hung on for 2.5 hours the other night waiting for Dwaylon to join. And unfortunately, he could not join.
Not join.
We actually mentioned on the show, though, he was making them dollars, and you can't get mad at somebody for doing that.
Yeah.
So because we're thinking, man, apparently the food truck's pretty popular today.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that it was.
Yeah, it was. It's been doing really well. A lot better than we expected. So
and if you hear Dwaylon's voice getting raspy, no, he's not going through puberty again. He's just been out working like a dog. Because the man supports his family, and right now, he's actually working, and I feel like I'm not. Not for lack of
trying. Yeah,
not for lack of trying, because I was supposed to have an interview a couple weeks ago, and they decided that they put a hiring freeze in that position. I'm like, that's the second time that's happened to me in the past couple months, but I'm still looking for stuff. I got recruiters looking for me as well. I find jobs and I tell the recruiters about them, and then they look into those jobs for me. But it's been a little frustrating, but at the same time, it'll happen. That's the way you just gotta have a little faith, which I do. So, and I've been, you've been busy food trucking and making some dollars. And I think last Friday you probably made a lot of dollars because man, we were really.
I know y'all were waiting, and I was like, oh, I feel so bad because it's like every time I thought we were going to be done and we were able to close shop, more people would come up, and it's like, well, I can't tell these people, oh no, we're about to close. It's like, no, I need that money. Come on.
Yep. And if you have not had a chance to listen to the Finish Your Wrestling podcast, go check them out. And I mean, we still managed to have a good time. And we talked about a lot of old school stuff. And, we're talking about the Mount Rushmore. Because at one point I even texted you and said, hey, get ready.
Yeah.
You're going to have to give your Mount Rushmore,
yeah.
When you come on. And, hour and a half later, we ended and there was no other Mount Rushmore. But that, I mean, it was a fun time. I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to it yet, but
I haven't yet. I do have my thought on the WWE Mount Rushmore, and people are going to think I'm crazy.
I mean, like I told Mike on the show, the main host, there really is no wrong answer. Because I mean it's very subjective, and because the ones that he gave were different, and with the exception of one, we had one in common. They were different from mine, but you can back up all of them. So I mean, really, there's no wrong answer.
Yeah.
And unless you say something like Nikita Koloff, because he was never in WWE,
right?
That'd be a wrong answer.
For me, real quick, it's going to be my personal feelings about him aside. Hogan, of course, because WWE would not be what it is without Hogan.
Same here. He was on mine and Mike's. That was the one win in common.
Hogan, Austin, Rock, Roman.
Oh.
I put Roman on there because Roman carried that company through the pandemic. Successfully carried that company through the pandemic. Roman was the biggest attraction and still is for the last 3 years, especially during the Thunderdome era and all of that. Everybody tuned in to see what Roman was going to do. And it was just like an unprecedented thing. I know a lot of people are going to be like, why is Cena not on there? The reason Cena's not on mine is because John Cena was big during some of the absolute worst times content wise in WWE history. That like 2008 to like the rise of Punk in summer of 2011 was just, for the most part, was just awful, especially with the whole Super Cena thing, where, you know, at least with Roman's run, there's always an air, in the back of our mind, we're like, Roman's winning. But
Mm-hmm.
they always book it like there's a possibility, there's a possibility that his opponent could win. They always book it to where, is this the time that they're going to do it? And then Roman pulls it out, and it's like, okay, Roman won. But for a minute there, I was thinking he was going to lose. During Cena's biggest runs, that was never a thing. You always knew John Cena was winning at the expense of other people. And I think that's the difference with him and Roman, is that Roman's not winning at the expense of other people, because the people that he's beaten have already been to the mountaintop, so to speak, with the exception of Cody. But Cody's been to the mountaintop in other companies,
Right.
and he'll get there. It's part of the story. But with Cena's run buried people that didn't need to be buried.
The only difference between my list and yours is I had Taker instead of Roman.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yep. So, but like I said, I mean, Taker,
yeah,
same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, I said Hogan, Rock, Taker, then Austin, and that one was one. It's hard trying to make a list like that, because you
It
think,
is,
oh, it's
because it's
easy, and
like,
then you're like, ooh, wait a minute, you start.
and it's like, there's an argument you could put Triple H on that list,
Yep.
because even taking out that reign of terror with the world heavyweight title, Triple H has had some influential stuff happen. He's had some classic matches that people still talk about. He's had, I mean, 14-time world champion. He's had some of the best matches in WWE history. You can make an argument to put him on the Mount Rushmore, especially now that he's doing the booking and stuff, and his run with NXT and stuff like that. So yeah, it's very subjective, but it's interesting.
But one of the nice things though about their podcast, I mean, they are also have very analytical minds.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, if basically I didn't start getting text messages from my family saying, "Are you ever going to come in here?" I looked, and we had been talking for over 2.5 hours.
Oh wow.
And some of that was before they even started like recording.
Yeah.
And and then the show itself is a little over 2 hours. So that says, I mean, he was able to whittle it down to 2 hours. But I mean, we still had a good time, but we're gonna have to do it again, because
Oh yeah, definitely.
we have to have the walking encyclopedia of wrestling. By the way, other penalty, if you realize this, other people are starting to call you that now.
Are they really?
Yes. So if somebody can give you the nickname Delicious, and I just said, hey, we've done, I can call you the walking encyclopedia.
Yeah.
We have Matt Mims as the walking thesaurus, because, oh my God, if you ever talk to him, you'll see why we say that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just natural conversation for him.
Oh yeah.
He's not thinking, okay, what kind of big word can I insert here?
He's not just throwing it out. It's just, it's just how he talks.
I'm like, I don't know what he just said.
Like you're on your phone scrolling.
I am.
What does this mean?
Like, oh, okay. He didn't say anything bad about me, which is good, because he beat me up too, because because you look at Matt Mims and you're thinking, somebody who's lifting that much weight,
he's a big dude.
That, I mean, and like probably like 0.5% body fat. He doesn't have time to go to a library. And then he speaks, and you're like, oh my Lord. Somehow he's exercising his brain too.
Uh-huh.
And very, very soft spoken, which is, of course, I mean, you're that big and you're that smart. You don't have to yell. You can just,
no,
just very, very calm. We need to get him back on the show at some point, by the way. But not only was I on that podcast, the episode I recorded with the mixtape. Now, they are a non-wrestling podcast. I will say that, they cover mostly pop culture from, right now it's the 80s and 90s, but I think it's starting next month. They're actually going to start including the 2000s and those stuff. But about, what was it, 3 weeks ago, I think I'd actually have to go look and and see what the actual date was we recorded. But I recorded an episode on their show that discussed 80s metal, you know, 80s heavy metal. I'm a metalhead, you know that.
Yep.
And I can't call Dwayne a metalhead because, oh my God, he listens to everything.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yep.
but I mean, I will say, I mean, I've actually seen him wear an AC/DC shirt because we had the same shirt. I've seen him wear Prince. I've seen him wear Johnny Cash. And I saw him wear Kiss the other day. What else am I missing here?
I'm trying to think what else. I have a Jimi Hendrix shirt.
See,
Well, I had it. Savannah stole it. I think it's still in her closet. Uh, trying to
hey,
think what
that's the
else.
way. I mean, that's also part of parenthood.
Yeah,
Everybody.
yeah, yeah. I have several different music T-shirts. I'm trying to get some more. Hope got me a Rolling Stone shirt,
See,
so I have that now.
like I
So
said, it's all over the place.
yeah.
You know, so um, me the shirts I have. I mean, I'll be honest with you, they're most of them are metal. Um, you know, I have a lot of Megadeth, Iron Maiden,
Hmm.
some Metallica. I mean, right now, that's not including the shirts that that shrunk. Yeah, they shrunk. So,
Shrunk.
or the shirts that people have actually posted on the Facebook a picture of me wearing different shirts. I'm like, I don't remember I did not remember owning a Warrant cherry pie shirt until somebody had the picture. And I'm like, oh my God, I did own that because I bought it at the sound shop at the Penny Raw Mall in Hopkinsville.
Oh God, the sound shop.
Yeah, which
Those were the days.
yeah, the sound shop where Dwaylen, myself, Dwaylen, his cousin Larissa, and our friend James Mounts, we were all in the sound shop one night when the power in the mall went out, so we had to leave.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. They're like, all right, you gotta go.
yeah, you got to go. You can't be in here with the power out. So,
Yeah.
but I was on their podcast. Well, the episode actually dropped today, and I normally don't listen, to any podcast I'm on because
Hmm.
you know how it is. You know, you hear yourself
Yeah.
speak, and you're like, I
Yeah.
don't know, did I really
Yeah. It's
sound like
like,
that?
mm-mm.
Um, that one because I had so much fun recording that with them. I was like, okay, I got to listen to see how much. I mean, if it even still comes across. I mean, because I was like,
Hmm.
because I mean, it was very enjoyable recording that with them, and um, because there's three of them, and then one of me, and so the four of us each gave our like a list, like three metal songs from the 80s.
Hmm.
And of course, when I was sitting in, they said, okay, and also give me two alternates just in case you had a duplicate. And he did tell me, he's like, yeah, as soon as I saw your list, I knew there was no way anybody was going to have a duplicate because I had like Overkill, Exodus, and Iron Maiden, So I was like, well, I mean, I chose those because if you're a metalhead, you should know these. And if you aren't, but I didn't want to go too obscure. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
But I mean, we still had a lot of fun recording. That episode dropped, so this past week I've been on two different podcasts, one of which Dwayne was supposed to be there, but like I said, he was working,
Yep.
and we've had our rule, work, family, things like that come first.
Yeah.
So that's just the way it is. Now, if we had this as our job, that'd be one of the coolest things ever, first of all.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but we also know realistically you have to understand how much what you have to do to make podcasting a career.
Hmm. Yeah.
And whoo, you're putting in just as many hours doing that, first of all, and then you also have to grow your audience. Speaking of which, grow our audience, and to our audience, which we love every single one because we've actually met, sometimes just through Zoom, but some cases, we've actually met them face to face. We love to hear feedback on how we're doing.
Hmm.
Especially, if you go on Apple Podcast, give us a rating, give us a review, preferably a 5-star rating. That actually helps us. That actually helps podcasts get noticed. Do the same thing. You can go on Spotify and you can give us a rating. You can do the same thing. Good Pods, give us a rating. I think there's other ones now. A lot of the different platforms are starting to add rating systems, but oddly enough, a rating, even if you give us like not a 5-star, it actually still helps us get noticed
Hmm.
because
Yep.
that means somebody's listening. But if you give us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcast, we will read it on the air. If you give us a 5-star rating and on a platform that you cannot give a review, but you still, if you send us a screenshot of showing that you get the 5-star rating along with the review that you would have given us had you been able to give one on that platform, we will also read that on the air. Case in point, good friend of the show, former co-host Kyle, has actually done that on Apple Podcasts and Good Pods, just because he's trying to help us out. He's actually given us ratings and reviews, and I read them on the air. BC Hunter from Wrestling with the Truth, Wrestling with the War, Wrestling with the 80s, he also gave us a review. The weird thing is his still has not shown up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, although I have seen it on a British website. So I do know the reviews there because I actually did get a screenshot from it. So I actually did read that one when it was on because BC, of course, is up in Nova Scotia, Canada.
Yep.
And for some reason, and he said he's ran into this issue before where he's given someone a review and it did not show up for months, for
crazy.
Yeah, for whatever reason. Yeah, but I mean, like I said, we will read them on the air. Definitely, give us some feedback. Kyle has always been really good about giving us feedback, giving us ideas. And then sometimes, and it's more or less a weird timing issue. He gives us an idea. I'm like, that's a good idea. And then something happened and we can't record for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And so and he's talking about something current, then, which would be a good, and it's like, then I feel bad. And I have to tell him, sorry, dude, we wanted to. Then there was one time, I actually did use an idea that he actually thought, no, that's not relevant now. I'm like, no, actually, I think, no, we can make that one work. And so we did. So, but yeah, if you give us idea, we will, we will use it as long as we can, because like I said, we felt bad because he gave us idea and then something happened and we had to delay recording.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, because it's like, hey, talk about that one thing that happened, right in the second, and then they record and all of a sudden it's old news and it's been, resolved, or it's like, sorry, dude. But, we always take inputs. Yeah, so definitely go on there, one of the platforms, because we're on all audio platforms. We're also on YouTube. Ted, the Hillbilly Hill, he's always giving us comments, and he's always actually texting me and Joanne, because we have we're one of the few people who are privileged enough to have Ted's phone number. So we actually he texts us straight now.
Yeah.
And Ted also lets me know how the Cubicle Chat's going. That's my other podcast, and I'm pretty sure if Dwayne never gets a chance to record another episode of the Intellectual Rockstar.
Yeah, I'm going to try to do that. I really need to do that. I really need to get back to it. Hopefully, I can get one recorded soon.
Yeah, because I'm supposed to be on it.
Yep.
Because one of the things we're going to discuss, by the way, I don't know if you can really see that because it's.
Yeah, I see it. Yep.
Yeah. For those of you who are audio only, I'm actually holding up a, I guess, kind of a movie theater popcorn tub, because I've got this. We got popcorn with it when we went to go watch something. I think it was that Asteroid City. Which, by the way, if you ever get a chance to see Asteroid City, I pass on that unless you're a Wes Anderson fan. Which
I keep getting ads on my TV about it. Like, I could forget which streaming service it's on right now, but it shows.
It's a Peacock.
Yep, and it shows on there that. And every time I see the ad, I giggle because I'm thinking Steve loved this movie.
Yeah. I'm surprised if my son, if he hears me talk about it, he will bust in here and talk about how much he loved it. My son is a Wes Anderson fan for whatever reason. You know what? I mean, once again, everybody's taste is subjective.
Yeah.
And that one,
the only Wes Anderson movie that I liked was The World Tenenbaums. That was the only one. Everything else is just I like off the wall stuff, but his stuff is a little too off the wall for me.
I think when you told me that the last time, I think a couple of days later, we were at Half Price Books, and they actually had a copy of the Royal Tenenbaums. So I went ahead and I said, "Look, Dwayne approved this one."
Yeah,
so here you go.
That one's good.
So I may actually sit down and watch that one with him. I tried watching Rushmore with him because I'm my wife and I, we watched that movie and when it was out the first time, it came on. We were stationed in Japan, and you pretty much rented every movie that was on base because, well, Yeah, you just because reasons. And we're like, I don't know what I just watched, but I wish I hadn't watched it. And because
Yeah, it's like it never made any sense. I feel like it never got to. I feel like it just ended. It never really
and
got to a conclusion.
I
It just
mean, you have to have a sympathetic character at some point, and I know we can segue that into wrestling, but you have to have a sympathetic character. Nobody in that movie was sympathetic. Nobody.
no, nobody.
The main character, I just wanted to punch him in his face
Yeah,
like every time it
yeah. I
came
didn't like
on.
a single character in that movie.
Uh
I not even There's times where you prefer the bad guy to the good guy to the sympath. You prefer the bad guy to the sympathetic character. I didn't like anybody. None of
I wanted them all to get athlete's foot of the head. I mean, it was
it.
just bad. And then so we tried watching it again with him, like, okay, maybe he's like, well, maybe it won't be as bad as no, it was worse probably.
Hmm.
And we watched we had to turn it off anyway because I think it was just getting late and some of us falling
Hmm.
asleep anyway. Didn't realize the reason we were falling asleep is because we're watching a Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah.
Because watching Asteroid City in the theater, it's the only time I've ever fallen asleep in a theater because of boredom. And I say because of boredom because like however many weeks later, I took him to watch the Spider-Man. Was it Across the Multi
Across the
Across the
Spider Verse.
Yes, Across the Spider-Verse, which interesting. I had not seen the first one, so there was a couple
Hmm.
things he had to actually kind of break down for me, but um the style that it was because it's animated,
Yeah.
the style is very different, and it was interesting. That one I actually did catch myself nodding off though. That's just because I was just exhausted. There's just
Right.
been a
Right.
whole lot of stuff going on, um, but that one, I mean, that one I actually thought, okay, I can watch that one again.
Hmm.
But yeah, Asteroid City, even with the star-studded cast, sorry, that movie's dumb. So that's why we're gonna talk about wrestling because wrestling's actually interesting.
Yeah. If you suffer from insomnia, just watch a Wes Anderson movie and you'll go right to sleep.
Yes. But yeah, I actually ought to tell Jay from the Mixtape Podcast, hey, y'all ever going to do a Wes Anderson movie? He may come back and say no, and you're never allowed to come back on again if you ever mention that again. But that was the movie that we watched when I got that Indiana Jones bucket. That's what the bucket was when it was Indiana Jones. I also had a drink with the Indiana Jones hat. You put a straw
Oh,
in.
okay. That's
And
cool.
with the Indiana Jones cup. So
Yeah.
I still haven't seen the new, the actual movie Dial of Destiny. But whenever Dwaylen is able to record again Intellectual Rockstar, by the way, if you haven't checked out his back episodes, go check them out. Especially if you like Batman, you'll really like them. And I'm looking forward to go because I'm supposed to be a guest on there. We're going to be talking about Indiana Jones.
Hmm.
So um, and I don't know if we're just going to discuss the first three, the first movie. Um, you have to bring up Kingdom of the Crystal Skull as much as what we don't want to.
Oh yeah, I'm going to.
Yeah,
I want to I want to get your opinion. I want to give our opinions on each of the movies and just see where we're at.
By the way, Kingsley Shacklebolt's in the very first movie. I don't know if you're aware of that. If you,
Really?
if you watch Harry Potter, you know who Kingsley Shacklebolt is.
Yeah.
Do you remember in the first movie when Marion she's with the one dude from Africa who's like, oh, I take her.
Yes.
That's Kingsley Shacklebolt. That's the guy who
Oh
plays Kingsley
wow.
Shacklebolt. Yeah.
Okay.
When I first saw that, I had to go, what? Yep. So, but yeah, so the podcast I was on, and like I said, with the movie bucket. But one of the things that happened this past Saturday was the Northern Wrestling Federation Summer Sizzler Fan Fest down in Covington. And we were right. The mystery guest was Abyss.
Yes.
And yes, that belt, if you're on YouTube, you see it back there. I'm not going to break it down and actually show. Actually, I have a picture of it. I could actually break out and show. He actually autographed it. So now that belt has been autographed by Tommy Rich, Dan Severn, and now
The Monster Abyss.
the Monster Abyss. Let me see if this actually will show up. Probably. You can kind of see it.
You can kind of see it, yeah.
Yeah. So, um, but yeah, he signed it. I mean, and like I was telling Dwayne before we start recording, That man is absolutely massive. And I have a picture of me standing next to him. I'm the small one in the picture. And let me put it like this. I am 6'1" and I weigh about 320. I was the small one in the picture. And as Waylon pointed out, it's like him standing next to his brother Terrence. Which we need to get Terrence on the show. Terrence, if you're listening, talk to your brother. We want to have you on the show so bad. We do. And by the way, speaking of Terrence, my mom told me not too long ago, I didn't know Waylon had a brother. I'm like, he was at my sister's wedding reception. I mean, and he kind of stood out a little bit. Yeah, I mean, because of a couple of reasons. One, he was the biggest person in the room. Because if you ever met him, Terrence, he's just a big dude.
Yeah, he's just a big guy.
And also because he looked a lot like Dwaylen, and he was the only person who didn't look like me-ish.
Yeah.
In certain aspects.
Yeah.
So I'm like, he was at my sister's wedding reception. How did you not know? I was like, okay. But yeah, somehow my mom didn't know. And it was because she saw the picture that my sister sent when she was in Hopkinsville however many months ago. And she had actually, she ran into Terrence. And so she got the picture and sent it to me to send to you. And my mom saw that and she's like, who is that? And she's like, that's Terrence. That's Dwaylen's brother. What?
You're like, come on, Mom.
Come on. I was like, she's gonna really, laugh if I tell her, yeah, Dwaylen also has a sister. So, but anyway, but yeah, the Northern Wrestling Federation had their Summer Sizzler, met Abyss again. Actually, the second time I met him, but I got his autograph. So now, I had to put the belt back, back on the shelf because if I didn't, it would just look empty. But
yeah.
And it is, I mean, I will be honest with you, it is kind of a pain trying to get it down and put it back up and get it to where it's, it doesn't, I don't knock stuff down. Gave Andrew Reed a shirt, gave Riley Matthews a shirt. And it was so hot. And I mean, I want to say this. So I actually do want to apologize to, actually, I mean, I had already told Noah about this, but I want to apologize to Noah and Kobe Kane. And then the Hollywood/box office blondes who are Rex and Adam Swayze and the Strays, and then Papa Nojo and DC, because we left at intermission. I wasn't feeling very well before we got there. I think I may have had a stomach bug because my wife had a stomach virus, some kind of thing, a couple days before that. And it made her like upchuck, pretty bad. My wife has a real sensitive stomach. Anything will make her, kind of throw up. Yeah, it makes her nauseous. Me, it doesn't always, it'll make my stomach hurt. It'll make me feel nauseous, but not, having to act on it. But I wasn't feeling good before we even got there. I mean, I took Pepto and everything, it felt like really bad heartburn, but it was like but it was heartburn plus more type thing. And then we got in there and inside that building had to have been over 100 degrees. And, there was, I mean, they had one great big ceiling. The name of the ceiling fan, excuse my language. The name of the ceiling fan was Big Ass Fan. It actually had the brand. Yes, was.
I love those. There's a restaurant here, Charlie's. They do like Philly cheesesteaks and variations of that.
Yes,
we have one here, and in their dining room, they have one of those fans. And I told Hope, I said, we ever build a big enough house, I want that fan.
Yes.
That particular brand in my house.
Yes, it is a real brand. And, well, that one is, in one spot, and it's a pretty big, wide open area.
Yeah.
And the temperature is right. I mean, and we, all three of us, we all sucked down like a few bottles of water. And then when the intermission hit, I'm not looking at the time. And also because the VIP admission, which I had VIP tickets, was at $3.15. The two bonus matches, the first one started at 3:30. The other one was around 3:45-ish. That's when the entrances started for that one. It didn't end until just a couple minutes after 4, and that's when general admission was. The bell time was until 6.
Oh.
So there's 2 hours right there, but that's when the Fan Fest was supposed to be taking place. They did not have a lot of games like they did 2 years ago, the last time I went to the Summer Sizzler Fan Fest. there was like 2 games, and there was like a ring toss and like a bowling thing. Nobody was really doing those. They didn't have as much merch as what they had before. They did have a lot of raffle stuff going on, which is, that part was cool. But the merch, they didn't have like the extra vendors like they'd have before. Even like the Women's Revolution Rising had a lot more extra vendors and things like that, and sponsors and things. So, and nobody wanted to, because you would actually meet the wrestlers, and they were in this one kind of area, and it was all packed. But of course, everybody's hot, so nobody wanted to go in there. And I was even talking to a couple of the wrestlers, and they were even talking about how miserable hot it was. And then when I started feeling kind of bad again at the intermission, and my son really didn't want to be there anyway, because he's just decided he no longer wants to watch indie wrestling. I finally relented and said, we're going to go at intermission, because I was just feeling bad. But I did see Nikki Victory get the belt off the pole.
Yep. Congratulations, Nikki Victory.
Nikki Victory.
First ever 2-time champion.
Yes, sir. I did see Andrew Reed put Joshua through a table.
I saw that on Bustin' Loose. I watched that last night or night before last. I watched it. And so I could see the highlights. Congratulations to Papano Joe, won the heavyweight title.
Yes, and that was in the 3 matches that I missed were 3 that I really wanted to see too.
Papano Joe getting DC up for that move. He got him up for his finisher, and it was like, wow.
Because DC,
that was impressive.
Yeah.
DC's a big, big man, and
yes,
Papano Joe was able to get him up.
Definitely congratulations, Papano Joe. He is one of the rare people who have actually won every single title in the Northern Wrestling Federation. There's
That's
only
awesome.
a handful of people who are Grand Slam champions there. The Hollywood Blondes, Box Office Blondes, whatever you want to refer to them as, are now the NWF Tag Team Champions again. They beat the Strays, and Noah beat Kobe Kane.
I saw that, yeah. In classic heel fashion, he's grabbed a big old handful of those tights during the pin.
Yep. But I actually did send Noah a message. I'm like, hey, dude, sorry I wasn't able to see your match. And I told him, I was like, I said I had to leave, because I said I wasn't feeling very good when we got there, and the heat just, even after downing all the water that I was. And at church the next morning, I still had a headache. And Randy said, have you been drinking any electrolytes? Like, no, I haven't, because I've been trying to stay away from Gatorade because of the sugar. And he's like, well, you can get sugar-free Gatorade. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm just dumb. And
you can get 0 sugar Gatorade.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that too, because I've actually gotten it before. And now this one right here, this power right here is not sugar-free, but I'm still gonna take it anyway. But I had my wife actually bring me a Powerade to church, and as soon as I drank it, honestly, I felt a lot better. So I was sweating out all the salt, and so there goes all the electrolytes.
Yep.
And so that's another reason I wasn't feeling so hot. But and plus and all that, but I mean, I think I had that same stomach thing. I had that until like yesterday. But yeah, so I missed those last 3 matches, and I really hate that, because I've never had to walk out of an NWF event before, and it wasn't their fault. I mean, it was just, it was just hot. It was like stupid hot in there. But I mean, I got to see, quite a few people, that, some of the wrestlers. I mean, it's always good to see them, including like Joe Pro James, talk to him for a bit, talk to Juice, talk to Big Mama, was able to see. And I still don't agree with this storyline, and I'm just going to throw it out there. I didn't like it in 1985 when Dusty Rhodes won the services of Baby Doll.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that either. I saw that on Bustin' Loose, and it's like, now I never like storylines where
human trafficking is involved.
Yeah, somebody is somebody else's property for 60 days, 90 days, whatever. It's like, yeah, I'm like you. Like, I didn't like it in '86 when Dusty did it. It's like, it's not any better now.
I mean, and I know even then, Jim Crockett weren't even the first ones to do it, because David Von Erich won the services of, I think it wasn't even Precious. I think it was still Sunshine and Jimmy Garvin.
Yeah.
This was back in like in 83 or 82 or 83, somewhere in there. And that was both of them.
Yeah.
It wasn't even just, but still, it's like, you know, there's, it's not a good look,
Yeah.
and it's rare for me to, kind of criticize anything the NWF does because, I mean, they are such a solid organization. I mean, they really are.
Hmm.
That's one I cannot get behind.
Yeah.
Um, and Savannah, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, she's, she's doing what she's told. I mean, and she's actually a really, really sweet person. I mean, we've had her on the
Oh
show,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know, it, it's just, don't agree with it, but I mean, it is what it is. Swinger and James Cross, they still had a pretty good match. The matches,
Yeah.
by the way, were good. All the matches that I saw, I mean, there was a couple of scary moments. One where Ella came right down on the top of her head.
Hmm.
Um, when Nikki was doing a Frankensteiner from the top, and Ella didn't rotate all the way over, and boom, came spiked herself, and I was like, ooh. And then during the it was the 8-person intergender tag match. Beck Reeves went to go do a leg drop on Chris Demise, and it looked like he miscalculated. And instead of leg, it was rear end, and it came down right on,
Oh.
yeah, right on Chris's head, and he had his face turned to the side, and so Beck came down right on, because the whole
Oh.
rest of the match, I mean, Chris, I mean, he was like holding, I mean, you could tell he was in some pain.
Uh-huh.
Now he actually stepped down to the floor at one point,
Oh
to
wow.
kind of, but he got back up there. I mean, he went through, because I mean, it's not the first time I've seen him get injured, because I was there the night he cracked his tooth in half,
Yeah.
so I mean, he's a pro. He still went in there and did it, but that one you could tell took an effect on him, and nobody's fault. I mean, unfortunately, it happens. I'm quite sure Beck Reeves didn't do it on purpose.
Right.
You
Right.
know, but I mean, the matches were good. Saw Riley. I haven't actually watched the Busted Loose yet, I have to confess, but did they show the end of that match? Because Riley actually got the pin.
I didn't see. I don't think they showed that one.
Uh she hit a Twisted Bliss.
Oh, did she?
Yes, she did. And I actually messaged
That's
her, through Facebook
that's
Messenger.
awesome.
Yeah, I'm like, hey, I said, awesome Twisted Bliss. And, I even told her during the intermission before we took off, I was like, hey, I said, that Twisted Bliss looked great. She's like, thanks. She's like, it's the first time she was using it. And,
Hmm.
she said she still has some tweaking to do, but I mean, I thought it looked great. Um, but I mean, the wrestling, like I said, was good. It was just some of the other stuff, and not their fault. I mean, they
Right.
didn't say, hey, let's have it be 90 degrees with heat index warnings and air quality warnings. And by the way, inside the building, it's going to be over 100 degrees. We were not the only people leaving because same reasons. I mean, you
Right.
could tell people, I mean, people were uncomfortable, but I mean, unfortunately, it happens. Um,
Yeah.
so, and real quick, I want to say I just discovered a new podcast, and they are kind of a combination of this podcast, Waylon's podcast, my other podcast. And this one, I just discovered them. Actually, I didn't, well, I say discovered, somebody told me about them. They are called the Nerdcast. Was it Nerdcast? Nerdcast Empire. There it is. And they've only had 4 episodes so far, but Nate Metz, the guy who he was on my show, but he also has Mysteries of the Higher Valley and the one about Utopia Higher Up for him. So he actually told me about them, and they do wrestling, they do video games, they do anime, and I'm like, we're going to have to collab with them.
Oh yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, so um, and their episodes, I mean, they're from somewhere around Cincinnati, and I do know that. So um, but I just saw something else. Oh, and one more non-wrestling thing. You've already seen this video, Dwaylen. My son decided to do the one chip challenge because we were in the Florence Mall and the FYE there actually sold
Yep.
it. And he has
Yep.
been begging to do that for a couple years, even though I showed him your video, where, um, you almost had blood coming out of your eyeballs because of the spice.
Oh God, it was so hot. That is still the hottest thing I've ever eaten in my life.
I refused to do it because, well, for one, I mean, I was already having stomach issues. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
And not only that, but I mean, I can't tolerate spice the way I used to be able to.
Hmm.
And that when I'm genuinely afraid it was going to get, it would have given me a heart attack. So I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm not
right.
going to do it. Um, my daughter refused to do it. My wife, she's like, are you out of your mind? You know, so he decided he was going to do it. And we got the video. And of course, you saw he was only supposed to take a bite of the chip. Instead, well, the chip broke in half as he opened it, so he had half the chip. He shoved that whole half a chip in his mouth. And I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good.
Well, Savannah and I did ours, and we were supposed to each take half the chip. Well, when Savannah got it, like just a little corner of it broke off. So that's what she got. And I got the rest of the chip. She lasted like 10 seconds. I lasted probably about 45 seconds. I'm like, can't do it. Between the two of us, we probably drank a gallon of milk trying to cool off. And it's like, that
Yeah.
was the only thing that would touch it. Like water made it worse. Any kind of juice made it worse. Milk was the only thing that would
For
touch it.
for some reason, my stepdad actually commented on the video to drink lemonade. Because it will neutralize the base. I'm like, it's an acid
No.
on another
Yeah.
acid. No,
Yeah. No.
I'm like, you're a Green Beret. You should know better. And by the way, people who've ever met, Green Berets, you have to be very smart to be Green Berets, and you have to know a lot about the science,
Hmm.
because of the way certain things work. And that's why I
Yep.
was very surprised that, he said that. I'm like, no, I mean, so my son, I didn't, when I watched the video for like the second time, I just wanted to laugh at him. And actually to see the big belch that he let out after he was chugging the milk.
Yeah.
At one point, he grabbed the milk and was drinking it straight out of the carton. Somehow I didn't
Uh-huh.
catch that when he did that live. But
Oh yeah, I saw it on the video. Me and Hope were cracking up. We watched it when he grabbed the carton. It was like, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it got him.
And I'm actually, speaking of that video, last time I checked, it had over 2,500 views. Let me see how many it might have now. And that was my wife, who posted it.
Hmm.
And let me see, because when you get, actually, when she has it as a reel, because she posted it as a video, then she also posted it as a reel,
Hmm.
2.9 thousand.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So he was semi viral, I guess.
Hmm.
But yeah. And yeah, so if y'all want to do the one chip challenge, knock yourself out. Um, I won't do it.
I tried to get Savannah to do that one that Leighton did from FYE, and she said, I was in FYE one day and I saw it and I'm like, ooh, I took a picture of it and I said, want to do this? She's like, absolutely
Yeah,
not.
yeah, because apparently the chip now is even hotter than the one y'all had.
Yeah, this one's got ghost pepper and Carolina Reaper.
Yeah. And he
Yeah.
actually mentioned the Carolina Reaper, and I'm like, you were
Hmm.
out of your daggone mind if you think I'm gonna. And and even though we've told him you were not to even think about that unless we are with you,
Yeah.
because I mean, unfortunately, because I mean, he could actually get hurt with it. And he thinks we're
Oh
crazy,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
no, it's like if something's that hot to
Yeah.
where the lady at the cash register said, "Do not touch it with your bare hands." That's why he's
Oh
wearing
yeah.
those
Yep.
gloves.
Hmm.
And she's like, "Do not touch your eyes afterwards."
Yeah.
And sometimes, I mean, it's just natural instinct.
Hmm.
It's kind of like going through a gas chamber, which I've done. Because they have
Yeah.
tear gas in there, and
And
you
you're
know,
just,
and
yeah.
and I saw a guy do that. I mean, he put his hands up to his eyes and rubbed, and all of a sudden, the tear gas, and he just
Uh,
screamed, "Ah!" Like, yeah, But I mean, so you got to think. I mean, if it's going to, tear your skin up from the acid, think about what it's doing to,
yeah.
your esophagus.
Yeah.
And he told me, yesterday, he's like, yeah, my throat still kind of hurts a little bit. But then he also told me, he's like, yeah, I went back and actually, the rest of the chip we actually put in the fridge. And he said, I broke off a little bitty bite of it, put in there. He said, yeah, it's still super hot. I'm like, why did you do that?
Because he had to know. He just
He
had
had
to
to
know.
know. And, but I'm pretty sure, the folks at home don't care about us eating, um, you know,
Ridiculously hot stuff. Yeah.
yes. But one thing they might care about is Lacey Evans apparently is no longer wrestling. She has left the
Yeah.
WB.
Yep. She said that she wanted to fight for other things. Um, like she's being very socially conscious and she wants to help people with mental health issues, and she's trying to give back to her community and different things. And she said that she wanted to fight a different battle outside of a WWE ring. I personally have all the respect for her that, you know, this is what she's feels like she's called to do. So that's what she's going to do. I really feel like WWE missed the boat
Yeah, they
with
did.
her, especially with the sassy Southern Belle gimmick. It was working. It was getting over. I mean, she was getting to where she was that heel, that type of heel that people would pay to see get beat up. And that's, that's always a good thing when you're a heel, if you can get people, if you can rile people up and get them to come to see your match hoping that you'll lose. And just everything about the presentation, like her promos, just the way she carried herself, just the way she wrestled, the women's right. I will say this, and people will disagree with me. The women's right, her finisher, the women's right, which is just a straight right hand punch, looked more believable than the Big Show's weapon of mass destruction.
Because she was a Marine.
Yeah. And I mean, the way she sold it and the way her opponent sold it, it just looked perfect. It didn't, like the Big Shows a lot of times always look kind of most of the time it looked kind of silly, because it's like you've got this huge guy that is pulling this punch, because if he's really hitting you as hard as he
Mm-hmm.
could, he's gonna shatter your face. I mean, it's just, that's just physics. But with Lacey Evans, it's like, you know, she hit it, and it's like it was so quick, but it was like she made it look like that she was shattering your face. And I just thought it was an excellent finisher. And I just think they should have, I think they ruined it when they put her with Flair, when she started feuding with Charlotte and they put her with
Yes.
Flair. And the only thing that saved her was
Was getting pregnant.
she got pregnant in real life. And then she comes back. And I feel like that WWE still, especially Vince McMahon, who was in charge then, I feel like that they still punish women when they get pregnant. I feel
Oh, I
like that
agree.
I think Becky Lynch was the exception to the rule. But with Becky, Triple H was in charge, by then when Becky came back from her pregnancy. But for the most part, if a female wrestler gets pregnant, they never get back to that level when they come back from pregnancy. It's like they get punished for getting pregnant. It's like they get punished for having a life outside of WWE.
And with Lacey Evans, or her real name, Macy Estrella. I mean, Mr. Faulkner would smack me for mispronouncing that.
Yep. Yep.
Mr. Faulkner was our Spanish teacher in high school, in case you're
Yeah.
wondering. But yeah, he would smack me upside the head for mispronouncing that. But when you're right, when she was a Southern Belle, that was a character you could easily hate because she was snotty.
Yeah. And
No,
when she pulled out the hanky, like when she was just disgusted with her opponent, she'd pull out the handkerchief and like dab her face and then like fan it at her opponent, like, oh, you're disgusting, and calling, the fans and her opponents nasties and things. It's like
you nasties.
it was so easy to hate her, but she was so good at it. And it's like, why did they never put the title on her?
And I think she is another one because at the time that she was going through that, where well, some people were saying, well, she wasn't that good in the ring. Yeah, you know what? She wasn't the greatest, but I mean, she was decent in the ring. I mean,
Here's the thing, she was getting better like every time
exactly.
she got in the ring. The problem is Vince McMahon was the one who plucked her out of NXT. She wasn't ready yet.
He saw
And
tall, leggy blonde is what he saw.
exactly, he saw a tall, leggy blonde, and he's like, "Oh, got to have her." So he plucks her out of NXT, and then the first thing she does on the main roster is the Royal Rumble. That's not, you don't give somebody's first big exposure on the main roster to be the Royal Rumble. And then people are like, oh, well, she botched some stuff. Of course she did. She's on this massive stage. She was not ready for, and she had to be nervous as hell.
Mm-hmm.
But people judged her on that and didn't want to give her a chance. And it's like she got better and better all the time.
And like you said, I mean, the Southern Belle thing, but then for some reason, people started actually kind of cheering her. And so she and Elias kind of had that same thing. It's like, okay, they're a heel, but people are cheering them. Okay, let's make them a face. But they really.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like Seth Rollins did it perfect. Seth Rollins was a detestable heel. Then he got to be the weirdo heel where he was, half Riddler, half Joker, just, completely out there. But then he started to get over. He started to naturally get over with the fans. They got behind him and just he gradually turned face. It wasn't the company going, "Oh, the fans are cheering him. Let's hurry up and turn him face."
Right.
But like you said, with Lacey Evans and even Elias, once the fans got into them, the company's like, "Oh, well, let's hurry up and turn them face because the fans are cheering them." No, the fans are cheering them in spite of the fact that they are a bad guy. So leave them like they are, because once they turn the person face, nobody cared.
And the promos, what got the fan, it's weird. What got the fans cheering them, what got the fans to like them was their promos where they were
Bashing the fans.
bashing the fans.
Exactly.
And it was they liked the character. Well, you turn that character face, they don't like the character because now they can't do those promos. And because if you notice, Elias, when he went back heel again, he was better. Lacey Evans,
Yeah.
same. Well, they turned Lacey face, and
Well,
it just it was
they pulled an Natalia / Big Show. They turned her face and then turned her heel and then turned her face, and then they had her where she was just flip flopping from week to week, and it's like nobody can get behind somebody that they don't know what your motivation is. Nobody's going to get behind your character if they don't know what your motivation is, and if you're flipping between face and heel every other week, then people are just going to move on to the next wrestler because they're going to be like, well, that's not interesting. We don't even know what she's about. And they just did her a huge disservice. And then, you know, she leaned into her own military background, which is fine. I mean, she's legitimately, a veteran. But then you had the whole controversy with, her and Sergeant Slaughter and Sergeant Slaughter's daughter because of the because of the Cobra Clutch and all that. And it's like, and the company didn't do her any favors because the company didn't reach out to Slaughter to get his permission to use the move. They just probably told her, "Oh, well, you were a Marine. Slaughter was a Marine. Go on and use that move. It's okay because you were both Marines."
Of course, the funny thing was Bob Remus, Sergeant Slaughter, his real name
Yeah,
was never actually a Marine, which
exactly.
surprised me. I actually thought that
Yeah,
he was.
I thought forever, especially when I was a kid and into GI Joe real big and everything, and he was involved in that. I thought he was legitimately a Marine, and he never was. But Lacey was.
But Lacey was. Or her real name was Macy Evans before she got
Yeah,
married.
yeah.
And who was she feuding with though that got her daughter involved? Was it Charlotte? Because I'm trying to remember that because it was one of those really hokey kind of things because they were talking.
Yeah,
was it Charlotte?
Yeah, it was Charlotte. Yeah.
And that was just a bad storyline, but like you said, when she came in from pregnancy, all of a sudden they had her as a heel, but being a Marine, put on her legit Marine Corps background. She was a security policeman in the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
So not somebody you'd want to mess with, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
you know. But here's the problem: you could get away with this back when Slaughter was, because Slaughter was also portraying the part of a drill instructor.
Yeah.
Drill instructors, I mean, are there to be mean and nasty. Drill instructor, drill sergeant, training instructor, or the Navy calls them like company command. They're instructors. Military
Yeah.
instructors are there to be. They'll believe me. They'll tell you, because I've heard
Yeah.
it, that they
Watch
are
Full
not.
Metal Jacket if you don't believe
Yes,
us.
watch Full Metal Jacket. I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty accurate, and they will tell you, I am not here to be your friend.
Yeah.
And
And
but
all
that
of that in Full Metal Jacket, every time the drill sergeant was doing all that, that was all ad libbed. The guy who portrayed that character,
Arlie Army.
he was a legit drill sergeant in the
Yep.
military, and every one of his lines was just ad lib. They're like, "Well, you've done this in real life. Go in and say what you
Yep.
would say to
Yeah, because
recruits."
he was there. He was supposed to be an advisor. He was supposed to be advising the guy who was going to be playing the part. So he
Yeah,
made this video of him doing all this stuff where people were throwing like oranges and stuff at him, and he never repeated anything. He never
yeah,
broke while they were doing that. And so they're like, wait a minute, why don't we just have him, who was a
yeah,
legitimate Marine Corps
yep,
drill instructor, we'll have
yep.
him be the drill instructor. The guy who was supposed to be the drill instructor was the guy in the helicopter during the Vietnam scene shooting at women and children, going, get some, get some. That's the guy who was supposed to be
Oh
the,
wow, the
but
drill
yeah,
sergeant.
yep. But Arlie Army, I mean, he did that part. I mean, you notice drill sergeants, drill instructors, Air Force calls them training instructors, by the way.
Hmm.
That's where, and that they'll believe me. I heard it firsthand. They are not there to be your friend.
Nope.
And, and so that character is one, yeah, people are not going to cheer the person who is there to just be mean and nasty.
No.
Well, with Lacey Evans and also Slaughter, that was back in the late 70s, leading up to the early 80s, where that character was like that. And then, of course, later on, he became the Iraqi sympathizer. And then,
Hmm.
but but now Lacey being Marine, people are not going to boo any veteran. Anybody
Yeah,
portraying a veteran who's just, she's not a drill instructor.
yeah.
It's a different time than what it was 40 years ago.
And here's the problem too. They did all the vignettes leading up to her coming back. After she had the baby and took her time and spent with her baby. She was coming back. They did all these vignettes where she talked about her upbringing and things like that. So how are you supposed to boo this person who has come through all of these trials and tribulations to get to where she is? But then as soon as she re-debuts, you turn her heel. And it's
Right.
like when the crowd was naturally cheering her because of the vignettes that you set up to make her a sympathetic babyface. Then you have her re-debut, and then turn on the fans and become a heel. And it's like it made no sense. And it didn't do anything for her. She never moved up the ladder to the women's main event scene. She just kind of languished in the lower mid card until her contract expired and she left. She didn't resign.
And if they were going to do the Marine as part of her gimmick, part of her character, they should have done it from the beginning.
Exactly. But you can't switch it up like that. And it's like, you can't go from the sassy Southern Belle to the hard nosed Marine because people aren't dumb. WWE acts like that people have a memory. They act like they act like we don't have a memory. They act like that our head is just like an etch a sketch where it's like, oh, okay, well that character's gone, and this is the only character they've ever been. No, Everybody remembers she was a sassy Southern Belle in NXT and for several years on the main roster. You can't switch that up and expect people to just automatically get behind the new character. If
Especially when they're
anybody
that
doesn't
polar
understand that,
opposite.
yeah,
You know,
you can't. Just like they took Smash from Demolition and turned him into the Repo Man, and wanted people to not realize and wanted people to think that wasn't Barry Darso in the Robin mask. No,
yeah.
no, that's Smash from Demolition. That's Crusher Khrushchev.
Yeah, I was going to say I still.
Yeah.
Or if you really want to go back, Crusher Darso.
Yeah, exactly.
When he was
Yeah.
the sympathizer
Yeah.
with.
He was
Do you remember who his tag team partner was?
Slaughter. Wasn't it
Not
Slaughter?
Jim Neidhart.
Oh, okay. Okay.
No, Slaughter's partner was the guy who later on played Boris Zukov.
That's right. That's
He
right.
was Private Nelson, then he became
Yep. Yep.
um yeah,
Barry Darso was also the Blacktop Bully.
yep.
Had the match on the truck with Dustin Rhodes, and they bladed and got fired right after the match.
Barry Darso, he seems like a very just the way Randy would put it, just a good quality human being.
Yeah.
If you ever see him in
Yeah.
interviews, he just seems like he's just one
Yeah.
of the nicest people, very sharp. And
Yeah.
he was actually friends with the Road Warriors, friends with Nikita Koloff, in
Hmm.
real life, in
Yeah.
Kurt Hennig. He was part of that. Well, I'll call them the Minnesota crew, not Minnesota
Yep.
Wrecking Crew, but that crew,
Yep.
whole
Yep.
bunch of them who all came out of Minnesota and just,
Yeah. Well, like you were saying, I just thought, speaking of Minnesota, thought of Rick Rude. Um, you were saying about Lacey Evans and Elias and their promos and things. They were bashing the fans, but the fans got into it and kind of interacted with them. It was Rick Rude. Rick Rude did the same thing. And even though he was this detestable heel, fans loved it because they could interact with him because he would always interact with the fans. It was always negatively, but he
right.
always did. And Rude got over that way. You know,
Rude definitely got over with the women.
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I
He
mean,
took he took that robe off and it was a wrap. That was it. It was like but like and Rude knew how to do it. And Rude never Rude never was a face because I think he understood that his character was never going to work as a face. He was an
mm-mm.
arrogant heel and he made it work. But he was excellent in he was an arrogant heel and you wanted to see him get beat up and then the bell rang and he gave you such quality matches that you're like, "Oh, well, I wanted to see him get beat up, but now I just want to see this dude wrestle because he's always good."
Yeah. And because anytime Rude held a belt or was going after a belt, I'm like, he's going to be hard to beat for a belt, and he's going to be hard to defend against because
Well,
he
yeah,
was
when he
always
was in
winning.
the yeah, when the Dangerous Alliance, which is an extremely underrated faction, by the way,
Yep.
he was the centerpiece, and he was the United States heavyweight champion. He was number two in the pecking order. But Rude was so good that really a lot of times the U.S. title, when Rude had it, overshadowed the world heavyweight title because Rude made sure that the belt he was holding was the most important one. And that speaks a lot for him as a performer and as a wrestler and just as a wrestling mind that he was the leader of this faction with the quote unquote secondary belt.
And it also says something that when he was the Intercontinental Champion, by the way, he beat the Ultimate Warrior. It wasn't clean. I'm not going to say it was, but he beat Ultimate Warrior for the title.
It got That's all right. It got done. So
He got it done. Now Warrior did beat him back.
yeah,
I don't remember how long it was later, but because he beat Warrior at WrestleMania, I think Warrior got it back at SummerSlam, maybe. But
yeah.
um,
And then the next year at SummerSlam, that was after Warrior had beat Hogan for the title, and him and Rude had a cage match at SummerSlam for the world title,
the world title.
which I always felt that Rude should have won, but they were still
Yeah.
pushing. They still thought the Warrior was going to be Hogan's replacement, but we see how that panned out.
If you get a chance to listen to the Finish Your Wrestling episode, we actually talked about, dude, we had a very, very long conversation. It took my wife and my kids to go, are you still talking? I mean, but yeah, we actually covered some of that. Rick Rude's name didn't come up, but Warrior and Hogan did for a few
Hmm.
reasons. But Rude was also legitimately tough.
Oh yeah,
And
no, nobody messed with Rick Rude.
yeah, and he also apparently was known for having a they said good dude. I mean, it wasn't like he was just going around being a
Hmm.
bully, but they said, but he was not somebody you played ribs on. because he didn't play ribs on anybody else. And so
Kurt Hennig was his best friend, and Kurt Hennig was known for ribbing people. And
yeah,
even Kurt Hennig did not rib Rick Rude because he knew
exactly.
better.
He knew better. And because some people that Rick Rude thought had played a rib on or played some kind of joke on him, and he went after them and was like, I don't play around like that. And
Yeah.
But Hulk Hogan would not defend against Rick Rude because
No, because he couldn't. Hulk Hogan could not carry Rick Rude's boots.
nope.
He could not. Rick Rude was a tremendous wrestler, just a tremendous talent. I mean, wrestling mind, the promos, just the way he carried himself. I remember seeing him when him and Manny Fernandez were the gruesome twosome.
Yep.
And they were the NWA World Tag Team Champions.
Yep.
And you knew right then. You saw it. It's like star. He screamed star. It's like we talk about Rhea Ripley or Jade Cargill, or there's just those wrestlers that first time you see them, it's just that's a star in the making right there. And Rude was exactly that.
And the amazing thing, because Rude was one of the ones I remember seeing in the aftermags before he even went to Crockett, and because he was in Florida, he was in Memphis, he was in World Class, and then he eventually came to Crockett. And I was like, look for, Rick Rude. Okay, that's the guy, because you remember how it was, you'd see these people show up. You're like, I remember seeing them against, him and Billy Jack Haynes. They had a feud in a couple different areas.
Yeah.
But do you remember when Sports Illustrated actually had a story about professional wrestling? It was after WrestleMania 1. Yeah. So they focused mostly on WWF, but Rick Rude also had a picture in there. He was not anywhere close to being part of the WWF at the time, but they had a picture of him with a whole bunch of it wasn't even in the ring. It was just like a posed picture with a bunch of female fans around him. And of course, I'm pretty sure the female fans, they didn't have to pay them to be there either, because
I'm sure they didn't. Yeah.
But if that says something about him, because he had the look, he could talk, he could wrestle, he was actually tough. And like you said, we were comparing him to Lacey Evans. Yeah, Lacey Evans, they handled her wrong. Rick Rude was always a heel. People, they liked the character, but they liked booing the character because of the character, not because get out of my ring, you're boring me.
Yeah, and the thing is, they like to boo the character, but they respected the man playing the character, and they respected what he did in the ring.
Exactly.
So, and that's they didn't give Lacey Evans a chance to be respected for what she does in the ring, because they were so wishy-washy with her character. And I'm glad she's decided to do something different. I applaud her for being, socially conscious and she wants to do stuff with, veterans, mental health issues with veterans and different things like that. And I got nothing but respect for her.
I absolutely applaud that. Absolutely respect that. Coming as a veteran myself, and I've been open about my own struggles with mental health, because I can tear it down. It kind of sucks when you have a friend all of a sudden post on Facebook. I'll say it was a girl, and I have hundreds of female veterans on my page. So she said, I almost became one of the 22 tonight. And those of you who don't know what that means, 22 veterans a day commit suicide. And she said, I almost became one of the 22. And so for Lacey Evans, who is a legit veteran, to actually say, I'm going to help, that to me is more important than
absolutely
doing this.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and I would love to actually meet her in person at some point and actually tell her that, because she's another one. She just seems like a very good quality human being.
Yeah.
She's able to step away from it and say, you know what, there are more important things out there. So she wants to spend time with her family. Obviously, we respect that. Family comes first.
Yep.
And now she wants to help out her brothers and sisters, which, by the way, I actually met Adam Swayze's uncle this weekend.
Oh, did you?
I had them, of course, I like wearing my Afghanistan hat.
Mm-hmm.
This one right here, you know, um, it says Afghanistan veteran because I spent some time in Afghanistan, not a fun place. And he was wearing a hat. It was a hat, showing he was in the army.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times that's kind of a thing with veterans. You see somebody else wearing, one of the hats. I mean, well, you go up and you shake their hand, but the way when I told Adam Swayze later on, I said, yeah, I met your uncle. I said, notice we were talking about military stuff. We were actually talking about that before he even told me he was Adam Swayze's uncle.
Uh-huh.
And I said, it's like meeting a long lost brother,
Mm-hmm.
so with Lacey Evans, same thing. It's like meeting a sister you never,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't know you
Yep.
had. So, uh, but absolutely what, and 100, I hope that she does well with this for a lot of
Yes.
reasons, you know, um, because like we've always said, this is just a podcast.
Yeah.
There are far more important things. This is something we enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also very blessed. Some of the other things we did not foresee coming our way. We said it before, all the people we've met, all the people we became friends with, the connections we've made, the opportunities we've had, because of this, but at the end of the day, I mean, if the podcast had to drop for some reason, if we had to stop doing it, it would just have to be,
Yeah.
and I think she feels the same way about her wrestling career. You know what? She was at WrestleMania. She was at some, like I said, she was at the Royal Rumble. She's had
Mm-hmm.
some, I mean, she got a lot of exposure. People know who she is.
Yeah.
But she'll also tell you first and foremost, she's a Marine
Yeah.
because that's how Marines are. Montez Ford. He doesn't talk about it, but I'm pretty sure you're asking, are you still a Marine? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Road Dog. I actually did meet Road Dog and I actually talked to him for a little bit, and he was artillery. I think he said he was artillery, and we were, when I actually met him, the very first time I went to Chillicothe, which by the way I'm not going to be able to go here in September 30th, um, because my wife is going to be recovering from surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So I won't be able to go to that, but there'll be others. But I actually said, yeah, I did 20 years in the Air Force. He's like, oh my God. He said, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
And he was also there with Billy Gunn. And I'd always read this. You don't realize how big Billy Gunn is until you're right there. He is every bit as big, if not bigger than Hulk Hogan. He was just
Mm-hmm.
never pushed as that,
Yeah.
so, but yeah, speaking of people leaving wrestling seemingly forever, and Edge, now is he done with WWE because his contract expired last Friday?
Yeah. Yeah. His match with Sheamus on SmackDown was his last match on his WWE contract. I don't think I think he's done with WWE. I mean, there's nothing left for him to do. He is a Hall of Famer. He has won King of the Ring, won the Royal Rumble. He's main evented WrestleMania. Um, he is an 11-time world champion. You know, he's been the Intercontinental Champion, the United States Champion, Tag Champion. Um, he was able to come back from a what they thought was a career-ending neck injury and have another run. I think he's done, and he got to go out in Toronto. You
Yep.
know, I think he's done with WWE, but I don't think he's done wrestling. And if AEW is smart, they sign him to a short-term deal because Christian's there. And I think
Yep.
Edge wants to end his career somewhat, you know, somehow involving Christian because that's his best friend. That's been his best friend since grade school.
Yep. Ever since they first met, because I think it was Edge or Adam Copeland, who I
Mm-hmm.
think moved into that district with his mom.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And by the way, Edge, Adam Copeland, he's another one. If you read about his story growing up,
Yeah.
he didn't have it easy either.
No. And the first thing he did when he got his first big WWE contract, the first thing he did was bought his mom a house.
Yep. So
He's like, I didn't buy a fancy car or clothes or anything. He's like, I bought my mom a house. John Moxley was the same way because he had a rough upbringing too, and his mom struggled. And That's the first thing he did when he made it big in wrestling was bought his mama house.
And Edge and Christian, or Jay, what's his last name?
Reno.
Reno, Jay
Yeah.
Reno. Um, they had been best friends since they were in grade school.
Mm-hmm.
And they both wanted to be wrestlers. They started their journey into wrestling together. They went to
Mm-hmm.
training together. Now, a couple times, I mean, they both got sent different ways, but they always had the goal of being a team in
Yep.
WWF, the later WWE, and being tag team champions. And and they hit that goal. And they, as a team, they were so obnoxious,
Yeah.
and they pulled it off so great.
Yeah.
For those of you with the benefit of flash photography, the 5 second
Get the
pose.
5 second pose. I mean, and they won the tag titles 7 times. So
Yes.
that says a lot of what the company thought of them as a team.
And for whatever reason, Vince McMahon was not high on Christian. That's why
He
eventually
didn't like he didn't like Christian's face. He wanted to literally put a blue dot over Christian's face when Christian came out to wrestle.
that's
Because
just kind of rude.
Vince McMahon may be the pettiest human being in the history of pro wrestling. And that's saying a lot. But it's just ridiculous. It's like you've got this guy, and honestly, I've always been a bigger fan of Christian than I was of Edge. I always thought that Christian had the better, he was better promo. He was played an excellent villain. Even when he was a face, he was that smarmy, cocky type face
Right.
where it's like he danced that line to where, oh, he's a good guy, but it's like he's a little too smug about it. So, and I mean, I like that he knew his worth and he left WWE, asked for his release and got it, left, went to TNA, won 2 world titles. He gets to say he held that belt that's right behind you twice.
And if I meet him,
Yep. I mean, he's a 2-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Had
now I'm
like,
going to check and see if he's going to be there. Go ahead and keep going.
right, had, you know, some great matches in TNA. You know, and it's just I don't think Vince ever did right by him. And I've been enjoying his run in AEW, especially when he turned heel. And I mean, right now he's walking around with the TNT title, even though Luchasaurus is actually the TNT champion, but Christians has been so manipulative that he's carrying the belt like he won the belt. And
um,
I think Edge I think it would be smart for Edge to go to AEW. I mean, you've got if him and Christian team, which either I don't know, I don't know if they could pull off Edge being a heel at this. I mean, they tried it with the Judgment Day, but it didn't last long because they needed another babyface on Raw, which is why they kicked Edge out of Judgment Day. Um, but if Edge was to show up in AEW and turn heel, you've got or if Christian for some reason turns face, you've got Edge and Christian versus the Hardys, ready made. Because I mean, they redefined WWE's tag team division. You've got, could you imagine Edge and Christian versus the Bucks?
ooh.
Or you've got Edge and Christian versus any combination of the House of Black.
um, I think I agree with you, like your first statement. I think he's going to come back for a short time, just
Mm-hmm.
so he and Christian can reunite because they started together.
And
He
I'm sure Edge wants to end it that way.
he wants to end it
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Um, just like when Edge went to the Hall of Fame, who put him in? Christian.
Christian. Yep, and that was Edge's request
Yep.
for Christian to do it.
And there was no way they were going to turn him down. I was like, "Are you
Yeah,
kidding me?" I mean,
nope,
that was his best friend.
yeah,
Um, because there have been sometimes, the nominees said, "Okay, I want this person to put me in," and they got turned down.
yeah.
And because Jerry Lawler wanted Lance Russell to induct him,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all, nobody knows who Lance Russell is. We're gonna have William Shatner do it. It's like, what?
Yeah, that never made any sense because the only people that should have inducted him, if Andy Kaufman had been alive, Andy Kaufman should have done it.
Yes.
But Lance, I mean, everybody knew who Lance Russell was. Anybody who grew up with watching Memphis or Jim Crockett Promotions knew who Lance Russell was.
Yes. And if they would have told Edge, no, we're not going to, because Christian was with TNA, that's when they did that weird,
that weird swap. Yeah.
Yeah. And, or no, that's no Christian. I'm sorry. Christian worked for TNA when Flair came back, but Christian was involved in a weird swap with TNA at some point.
Yeah.
But they, if they would have told Christian or Edge, no, we're not going to have Christian duck you, Edge would have said, well, I'm not going in.
Yeah. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. I'm not going to do it. And,
yeah.
And Christian, I think, will also go into the WWE Hall of Fame at some point.
If he does it, it's a shame because he is extremely underrated. And I feel like that he was extremely unappreciated for the talent that he was then and still is.
I think once Vince McMahon is no longer the one making the decision on who goes in the Hall of Fame, I think that's when Christian ended up going in, along with Ivan Koloff, along with
Midnight Express.
Why
the Midnight Express are not in the Hall of Fame, I have no clue. I have no idea. Because
maybe Jim Cornette,
but the Rock and Roll Express went into the Hall of Fame,
right? And Jim
Cornette inducted them,
and they said we want Jim Cornette, and they were like, hey, because they're like, oh, this is going to be good.
Yeah. So, but it just makes no sense. It's like, put your ego aside or whatever the problem is, and induct the people who deserve that recognition. And the Midnight Express is one of the absolute greatest tag teams ever.
Yep.
And they should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago. Honestly, they should have been in the Hall of Fame before the Rock and Roll Express. Just my personal opinion. Rock and Roll Express, yes. Were they an important part of tag team history? Absolutely. But I always thought the Midnight Express was the better team, the more successful team, and I feel like they should have went in the Hall of Fame before the Rock and Roll Express.
Maybe one day we'll see it. Hopefully, because Midnight Express and well, you have a few different combinations of the Midnight Express too. But I'd say Bobby Eaton, Dennis Condrey, Stan Lane, and Jim Cornette.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Randy Rose, good wrestler, don't get me wrong, but didn't, his combination of Midnight Express didn't do much except for feud with the new Midnight Express.
Exactly. Yeah.
And, but with Edge, I'm glad he's able to leave WWE on his terms. And I hope he goes to AEW, reunites with Christian, even if it is for a short time, and then he can end it how they started it. And honestly, I hope Christian decides to hang it up at the same time.
Yeah.
They both decide, okay.
That would be great if they were able to go out together. If they both just decided, okay, this is it.
And, I'm just glad because we even said, within the past couple of years, Edge, he was still getting hurt. And we were, afraid he was going to hurt himself permanently. And once again, he'd be going out and because he got injured. This time he able to have apparently a barn burner over match with Sheamus.
I saw clips from what I saw. Yeah, it was an excellent match. If that's his last match with the company, he went out with a bang.
Right. And I'm pretty sure, he chose Sheamus.
He did.
That's who he wanted. So
yeah.
Now, reverting real quick back to the NWF, Larry D also put over Star Rider. I just figured I'd also mention that.
That's awesome.
Yep. So the Star Rider who we just had on the show a couple weeks ago, great guest, super nice guy, by the way. If you ever meet him, I mean, he really is. You can just tell.
The No Holds Barred match went the way we hoped it went.
Sure did. So, and I saw, from my angle, we just saw the falling and we heard the table crash. Now I've seen the video from a different angle. But that table kind of, Edge and Christian, the TLC matches with the Hardys and the Dudley Boys. I mean, those matches. I mean, for their match at WrestleMania 2000, and then their match again at WrestleMania X7 17.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those won match of the year for PWI, didn't they?
Yep.
And there's reasons for that.
Mm-hmm.
So and I know Matt Hardy, he's gotten over the whole Lita thing now.
Yeah.
That was 20 years ago. He's gotten over it. He's married with 4 kids. I mean, it's like
I
every year
think,
she's having a new kid.
yeah, I think they're at 4.
And, so he's doing well for himself. And you've seen like, you see him and Edge actually, they're
Mm-hmm.
back being friends again. I mean, of course,
Yeah.
there for a while, Matt Hardy, he was legitimately upset, so
And rightfully so. I
rightfully
mean,
so. I mean, but Lita's also in the Hall of Fame. The Hardys will go in the Hall of Fame. We know that.
mm-hmm.
They should. Uh, Cameron's favorite sons. That's the way I put it.
Yep.
And I'm happy that Edge is finally able to, because
Yeah.
it was just gnawing at him like every day that, he
Mm-hmm.
could not leave it the way he wanted. And I know, I mean, trust me, life's unfair, and it
Yeah.
sucks. But for him to get that second chance, because not everybody gets that. I mean, he took advantage of it. He was appreciative of it, and now, but he's finally able to kind of get the closure that he kind of deserves.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So. Oh, and I'm trying to think what other news besides I just saw Hulk Hogan had a news piece about all the drugs he used to take. What all the
Oh, Hogan, no one cares. Everybody knew you were
uh,
drugged out. You
well
were
he's
either
like
roided out or coked out, one of the two.
he's actually talking about the painkiller addiction he had because of all the surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
Now the crux to the story was, and now he's doing CBD because Flair and Mike Tyson have turned him on to CBD, and
Mm-hmm.
he said he does that, and his joints all of a sudden the aches go away right. The aches and pains go away immediately, just about.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, of course, all the back surgeries he had from the 8,000 leg drops. I mean, you jump up, you land right on your butt. Yeah,
Yep.
it's going to cause a lot of back injuries.
Both hips have been replaced. His knees are shot.
and
So,
and he also said facial surgery from the many times he took impacts there too. And I'm like, what? Never thought about that, but I guess that would
yeah.
happen. So,
Uh, what about Cash Wheeler getting arrested?
yes, I haven't seen much of it after that, but
Uh, they um he's still going all out in Wembley
really,
because he hasn't been convicted yet. Because
there you
Tony
go.
Tony Tony Khan said, one if he gets convicted, then they will, you know, deal with he will be
Right.
given consequences then. But he hasn't been convicted yet. Investigations ongoing, so he can still compete because Tony Khan was sweating because that's a marquee matchup on that show. The FTR defending the tag titles against the Bucks. This is the third match in the trilogy.
Mm-mm. And that's this weekend, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Ah,
And I see the Bucks winning the tag titles. Bucks are talking about concentrating on tag wrestling again. And FTR have been talking about hanging it up. They said they didn't know how much longer they were going to do it. I mean, FTR has built themselves into one of the best tag teams ever. I mean, they collected belts across the world.
and they're good. That's the reason
They're
why they,
oh
man, they're
God,
good.
they're good. I mean, every time I see them wrestle, I see Tully and Arn.
Yep.
They
And
have that same where they can just look at each other and know what the other one needs or wants, and they don't have to talk in the ring. They Everything they do is just seamless and just smooth, and it's like they're just phenomenal tag team.
and one of the things, this is something I actually thought was pretty classy. When Jim Neidhart passed away, the very next match they had on whichever show it was, Raw or SmackDown, they actually did, was it the Heart Attack?
The heart attack, yep,
Yep, in tribute
to
to
Jim
Jim Neidhart.
Neidhart, yeah. And then when Brody Lee passed away, uh, his nickname was the Big Rig, so they changed the name of the Shatter Machine to Big Rig.
So a true tag team, not just two individuals put together. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they were a true team. They worked on or they work on team moves,
Mm-hmm.
and you can tell. I mean, the work that they put in to get those moves down. And I hate to see them break up, but I mean, if they're calling it a day as far as wrestling, like we said with Lacey Evans.
Well, they're talking about hanging it up. They don't know how much too long they're doing it, but there have been rumors too that once their AEW contract is up, they may go back to WWE for their final run, especially since Vinnie Mac is not in charge and won't have them doing stupid things like Usi Cream and all that crap that he had
and
them doing.
shaving each other's backs.
Yeah,
It's like what?
yeah.
Uh,
It's
mm.
but yeah, Cash Wheeler's still going to get to compete. He had a road rage incident, and unfortunately, he stopped somebody and was waving a handgun at him, and it's like,
Oh, that'll do it.
that's not a good look.
Nope. And the headline, all they had to do was say Florida man, and
Yeah,
so
pretty
therefore
much.
say he became Florida man.
Yeah,
Um, wow. And besides that, I don't know of any other
I think
news.
that's
And
really about it. I mean, uh,
I got the
actually, things have been quiet on the CM Punk being a control freak front, and
um. Speaking of CM Punk, and really this is more about Phil Brooks. He, he's on the show Heels. He's
yes,
actually a little bit more of a role during this one. I mean, it's still a bit part. I mean, he's not playing anything major, but he's actually doing pretty
right.
decent on there. So that show, the if you haven't caught it, go check it out. I mean, it actually is really good.
Mm-hmm.
And because I mean, you're looking at like kind of the inner workings of an indie company, but it's looking at the wrestlers as the people behind the characters, not just
Yeah.
they're not just the wrestlers. And um but it is really good, and I've enjoying it. I just have to remember when it comes on. It's because I watched the episode that aired last Friday, or debuted or dropped last Friday, because you can watch it on demand. I watched it yesterday. And so I've been catching them like 4 or 5 days after they actually
Yeah.
come on. Um, but yeah, definitely go check that out. And I watched that one. Then I also finally finished watching the past couple of weeks. The things that you can do, well, when you don't have a job, is you can watch a lot more TV shows than what you did before. I watched the
Mm-hmm.
last season of Big Bang Theory. I watched the last season of Ozark, and catching up on Heels, which Ozark, wow, that's a
Oh, yeah. Ozark is. I love that show. I
yeah.
need to watch it again. It's fantastic.
Did you watch the last season? The one
Mm-hmm.
before.
Yeah.
Woo, man, people were dying left and right.
Oh yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
As JBO would say, they were stacking bodies like cordwood.
yeah, they were. Because I got to thinking, I was like, what is the body count on that show? And and sometimes you just knew somebody's better get killed, but it was that more than once. I'm like, oh,
but
and
the thing is, it's kind of like Ozark. Like whenever somebody did get killed, it it was always a reason. It wasn't
yep.
just a random. It wasn't just random. It wasn't just bodies just to have bodies drop. There was always a good reason for
Well,
whoever got
I'll
killed.
say there's a reason when Darlene would kill people. It was just because she just got mad, spur of the moment, knee jerk reaction. And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, "Hey, Darlene, they forgot to give you your onion rings."
Oh, bop.
Pop. It's like, yeah, she just had a hair trigger temper, and
Oh
she,
yeah, she was just a psycho. It's
oh yeah,
just
yeah. So, but all right. So hopefully, we can record this Thursday. This weekend, I'm going to be taking my daughter back up to college. So we're back to that. Um, in a few weeks, my wife is going to be having surgery. We actually know the date. I'll tell you about it when we're off the air.
okay.
So I don't know how that's going to affect recording, ladies and gentlemen, but we'll have to see, because making sure my wife is taken care of while she's convalescing from she's having foot surgery. I mean, it's not a huge deal, but I mean, I still have to make
Mm-hmm.
sure she's taken care of. So I don't know how that'll affect the recording, but we will see,
Yeah.
so, but in the meantime, for now, just say goodbye and God bless.
God bless.